Hi, my name is Alex DeRusso, and the networking protocol that I would like to cover is the File Transfer Protocol, which I will refer to as FTP from now on until the end of the presentation. FTP was developed by a student by the name of Abhay Bhushan. Picture here, age now, is located on the right. This was in the year 1971. This protocol was developed to transfer files between the client and the server computers on the network. And when I say client, I mean a end user's computer. It could be a desktop or a laptop. It could even be a phone, but that's what a client is. FTP was used on the Network Control Program, or NCP, originally. However, when the new TCP/IP model was made public, FTP was configured to work on this new protocol stack. FTP has the basic configuration of username and password security, but does not contain much more than that. FTP has two different modes which data can be transferred in. FTP connection modes. The first attempt that the computer will try to make is the active mode. If the server is not being protected by a firewall, then the server will attempt to set up a connection to the listening computer. The server will initiate a data channel through port 20, which is the FTP server data port. If the connection is blocked because of a firewall or some other security measure, then the computer will attempt to connect in passive mode. When in passive mode, the client usually lies behind a firewall, therefore must use a control connection to send a pass-v command to the server. Unlike active mode, where the server and client are both sending data back and forth, when you are using passive mode, the client actually initiates both connections to the server. On the right side, you will see the picture of the active FTP and passive FTP connections going through with their flow. And so on the active FTP, a message goes from the client to the server, out of the server to port 20, you can see down there, and then back to the computer. And passive FTP has a message coming out of the computer not just once, but twice. And one is going through the port 21, the second one, the FTP data, will go through port 20. Since 1998, FTP has supported IPv4 networking. However, the file transfer protocol now supports IPv6 functions and has even added a sub-mode to the passive mode, known as extended passive mode. As far as pros and cons go, there are benefits and disadvantages to both modes. Using an active mode FTP means that it will be easier for the server side to establish connection. However, the possibility of the server connecting to a high-numbered port can cause problems on the client side. Likewise, using a passive FTP is much easier on the client side, but a lot more difficult for the server. The client sends two connections, which one may also be sent to a high-numbered port, therefore creating an error on the server side, as it is unable to pass through the firewall. FTP likes to use two specific ports when it is sending through FTP. For FTP data, like in the active FTP diagram we have up here, we're going to be using port 20. FTP control, however, likes to work through port 21. Both FTP data and FTP control use TCP protocol in transmission. When it comes to the actual data inside of the files that are being transferred, there are 4 different translation types. The first is known as ASCII. This is used for text. It's a simple 8-bit data conversion. And it then converts it back to the plain text once it gets to where it's needed. This translation is only used on plain text files. The next is image or binary mode. In this system, in this method, the system sends each file byte by byte, and it is stored in a bit stream. This translation can be used with any type of file. EBCDIC mode is used specially between hosts, and the file is sent in plain text. Local mode. This is specially used when two computers, which are set up identically, are sending data on a local network. Instead of having to convert the data to ASCII, data is sent in its proprietary format. And over on the right, I just have two charts so you can see sort of what the conversion is looking like for this. Okay. The data can be sent through the FTP using one of three different methods. The first mode, continuous mode, is a steady, continuous stream of data being sent through the network. This benefits FTP as it does not have to actually process the data. Rather, the TCP does all of the processing. Also, this type of transfer does not need an end-of-file indicator unless the data is divided into records. Block mode. Data is broken down into several parts. FTP processes the data and then breaks it into three separate parts. There's the block header, which I have an image of over on the right side, just a very basic description of kind of what that is. So we have the block header and the byte count, and then you would also have the data field. The data is then sent to the TCP. Last is compressed mode. In this method, data is compressed into much smaller data using a simple algorithm. Then, upon arrival, the data may be uncompressed and then used. FTP security is very low grade and is vulnerable to many types of attacks. The attacks include bounce attacks, brute force attacks, packet sniffing, spoof attacks, and port stealing. There are many variations of FTP, however, which include much better security measures, which I'm going to speak with you in this slide here. The two variations which have extra security are FTP/S. FTP-S is FTP with a secure sockets layer, shortened to SSL. It's added for extra security. SSL uses a control setup for encrypted links and requires a certificate. And SFTP is like FTP-S but somewhat different because it also uses SSL but in a different way. SFTP is a secure SSL-based extension of SSL and only uses the port 22. Last, we have trivial FTP. This one is not so much for security, but it's very simple. It was developed long ago, and it's often embedded in parts of networking devices. Now I want to show you some of the important FTP commands you might be using whenever you get started with FTP. FTP is a text-based command prompt application through the FTP shell. You can see in the picture on the right side what the FTP shell looks like after you've supplied your host. So you do FTP host, then your username, your password, and then you're in. From there, you can use the open command, which begins a new session. Close likewise stops the session. Quit/buy stops the session and exits the shell, so you'll be back into the main command prompt. PWD is helpful because it displays the directory list of the server that you're logged into. So depending on what you're doing, you can look around at the files that are there. And you can do that even more so with LS, which displays all files and directories in the active FTP system that you've logged into. You can use CD if you aren't finding what you're looking for and you want to look in another directory. Use the CD command. Bin stands for binary. In the terms of whenever you're sending data, you have ASCII and binary. And there's times whenever you may need to send a zip file or an executable file, and ASCII does not support that. The put command copies a file and puts it in whatever file that you designate it to. And the get command is useful for downloading something off of the internet or the server that you've logged into. Okay. Important things to remember about FTP. I think my slide is cut off just a little bit. Let me see if I can move it over. Okay. FTP is an older protocol. It was brought about 40 years ago. So it's very basic in the security sense. You need to have your host name, username, and your password ready whenever you plan on logging in and doing anything with your FTP. Otherwise, you're not going to go anywhere. And if you do use FTP, go ahead and consider moving to a safer encrypted alternative like SFTP or even FTPS, just to get your users some more security. SFTP is FTP in an encrypted port, which is more secure. Just wanted to recap that. Last, always back up your files. Always, always, always. I cannot stress that enough. And one extra thing I thought was neat, if you want to test your computer and see if you can use any FTP commands or do anything that route, here's a website on the right side with a link you can go to check that out. And last but not least, works cited. Just to remember, FTP is a very basic but powerful and useful tool which allows computers in a network to move data all across a network. There's nothing wrong with trying a couple simple commands and seeing how you feel about it, as long as you're not trying to move any root folders or anything that looks important. It's mostly harmless. Alright, thank you very much.